Welcome to Unit 2, Part 2. In the Unit 2 introduction video, we learned about the whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, and 16th notes. We learned about their values. We also learned about the values of dots. So the dots are always half of the value of what the note is on. So when you have a eighth note here, this dot represents the value of a 16th note because it is half of the value of an eighth note. Then we also learned about different values of rests and tide. And then we looked at our time signatures as well. And we learned about triplets, that when you have a triplet is played in the speed of 2 and in the beat of 1. So to get triplets, all you have to do is use the 3 notes and slash 1 note off. So these 3 notes must be played in the speed of 2 quarter notes or in the speed of 1 half note. Okay, so they're all, it shows the equal value. Okay, we learned about the time signatures, different values in terms of beats and pulses. So when we have duple time, which is a 2, strong, weak. When you have triple time, it is strong, weak, weak. And then quadruple time would be strong, weak, medium, weak. So I'll go over that again. So in duple time, the top number is usually a 2. So your beat number 1 is strong, beat number 2 is weak. In triple time, beat number 1 is strong, beats number 2 and 3 are considered weak. And then in quadruple time, beats number 1 is strong, beat number 2 is weak, beat number 3 is medium, and then beat number 4 is considered a weak beat. And of course, we learned about dotted whole notes. Okay, so again, this is a whole note here, which gets a value of 4, and then the dot represents half of that value, which is going to be a half note. So when you add this all together, that should get the value of 6. Okay, so now we come on over to our first exercise. So we're on page 22. It says, draw one note that is equal in value to each of the following groups of notes. So we look here and we see the value of 3 quarter notes. Quarter note 1, 2, and 3. We have 3 quarter notes here. So what we can do is take these 2 quarter notes, put it to the value of 1, which would be a half note. So we'll start by drawing a half note. And then this extra quarter note here can be represented in a dot because the quarter note is half the value of a half note. So we put a dot on that, and that will take care of that. Okay, so 3 quarter notes is equal to the value of 1 dotted half note. Okay, we have here a triplet for the next one. Now remember, when we have triplets, my advice is to look at it and just slightly take your pencil and slash off the first one because we have to get 3 of these notes in the value of 2 of them. So these 3 eighth notes here should be the value played in the value of 2 eighth notes. So 2 eighth notes is equal to 1 quarter note. So we draw our quarter note. Okay, and you should be able to take your time and go through the others. All right, let's come on over to this one here. So here we have an eighth note, and then inside our triplet, we have 3 16th notes. So once again, within the triplet, I'll take off this. These 2 16th notes should be equal to 1 eighth note. So up here, I can draw like a tiny eighth note. All right, because we have a triplet, all 3 of these should be equal to the value of that, the eighth note. And then we'll say, okay, we have the value of an eighth note here, the value of an eighth note over here. So let's take these 2 values of eighth notes, and that should equal 1 quarter note. Okay, so you can take your time slowly and go through the others. Okay, we come over to question 2. Question 2 says, add the missing bar lines be sure to add a double bar line at the end of, or the end of the piece. So bar line at the end. Okay, so our key signature tells us we need the value of 2 quarter notes per bar. These 2 eighth notes is equal to 1 quarter note. I have 2 16th notes, which is an eighth note, 2 16th notes, which is an eighth note. So take those 2 eighth notes. So 2 16th notes is an eighth note, 2 16th notes is an eighth note. Take these 2 eighth notes. Those 2 eighth notes are equal to 1 quarter note. So I draw my bar line. So we have the value of a quarter note here, the value of a quarter note here. We have 2 eighth notes, that's equal to 1 quarter note. Here's another quarter note. I draw my bar line because I'm looking for the value of 2 quarter notes. So here's beat number 1, beat number 2. Beat number 1, beat number 2. I'll come on over to here and I'll say, okay, I have 4 16th notes equals to 2 eighth notes, just like we did over here, which is equal to 1 quarter note. So we have a quarter note value here, a quarter note value here. I draw my line. And then, of course, we have a quarter note here, and then we'll slash this off. This is equal to 2 eighth notes. 2 eighth notes should be equal to 1 quarter note. So this should finish off my line. Let's say, for instance, I came here and I was unsure. I came here and I was kind of unsure about this one. Sometimes what you can do is work backwards. So if you come here and you're kind of unsure about it, you can look back here and see if it makes it a little easier working this way. So I'll look here and see my quarter note. I'm pretty sure that this should equal a quarter note here. So for sure a line should go there to cut that off, because this has to equal the value of 2 quarter notes. And then you'll notice that within that, it ends up the value of 2 quarter notes as well. But you could also still double check just to make sure. Okay, we'll come down and do this one here. So this is common time, and common time, if you remember, common time refers to a time signature of 4/4. That is the most common time signature. So this would be a 4/4 time signature. So we're looking for the value of 4 quarter notes in every bar. We have a half note here that's equal to 2 quarter notes. This is quarter note number 3. And then we'll take this eighth rest and this eighth note. These two values equal 1 quarter beat. So I'll draw my bar line. I can look at this and I can try to figure it out, but maybe I might come back here and work backwards. Okay, it all depends on how I'm feeling, but I'll keep going this way. So I have 4 16th notes. That's equal to 1 quarter note. I have 16th value plus 3 16th note, which is equal to another quarter note. So this is equal to 1 quarter note. This is equal to 1 quarter note. I have a quarter note here, which is beat number 3. And then I have a value of a quarter note in these 2 eighth notes here. So I can draw my bar line. From here, let's work backwards. Okay, so I have the value of 2 eighth notes here, so that will be a quarter note. I have 2 eighth notes here, that will be another quarter note. And then here I have a half rest. A half rest is valued to 2 quarter notes. So I know that this was 1, this was 1, this is 2. 1 plus 1 plus 2 equals 4. So I know for sure I should have that, a bar line there. Okay, and I can go ahead and double check here. Here's a quarter note. This is a quarter rest. These 2 eighth notes make a quarter note. And then, of course, I have a triplet, which is equal to the value of 2 eighth notes, which is equal to the value of 1 quarter note. So I have 1 quarter note here, 2, 3, 4. So nicely everything is there. And of course, I must remember my bar line at the end. So this was just another option. For instance, if you come up and you notice that something is just, you're unsure, you can always maybe work backwards and just to see if you can find and get back into get your answer. Okay, so there's no harm in working forwards, and then if you come to an issue, to just look backwards and see if you can work towards it and complete it. Okay, so you should be able to conclude and finish the rest. Okay, we'll come on down to number 3. This one says add the time signature to each staff. So it gives you all your bar lines. All you have to do now is sort out your time signature. So I'll look at this, and the first thing I like to do is look at what majority. So I'll look at, see, 2/8 notes here, which is equal to a quarter note, a half note here. That could be some quarter note. These eighth notes could end up into one quarter note. So you see how these 2/8 notes here, that could equal one beat. So a majority of this looks like it's a time signature of 4. So it's going to be based on quarter notes. So your main beat is going to be a quarter note. Now you have to determine how many quarter notes are in each bar. I can work this way because these are easier to count. So 2 plus 1 is 3. This is 1, this is 1, this is 1, that's 3. A quarter note here plus 2 half notes, that's 3. And then I can go ahead and double check this too. So this is 2/8 notes. Here's a quarter note. And as this dot represents a tiny eighth note, remember the dot is half the value of that. So this dot plus this will equal the next quarter beat. Okay, let's say that again. So here are my 2/8 notes. That equals one quarter note. Here's a quarter note on its own, and then the dot. The dot plus this eighth note equals the next quarter note. So I can conclude that this would be a 3/4 time signature. Okay, so you should be able to do the next two on your own. Let's come on down to this one here. All right, so I'll look at this and I'll see quite a bit. So I'll see quarter notes here. I'll see the value of 4/16 notes here. That could equal a quarter. Here's an eighth note. So a lot of these, when you combine them, it should equal one quarter note or a quarter note, right? Here's a quarter note. This plus this could equal another quarter note. So I'm going to conclude that a lot of this should be the value of quarter notes. So I'll draw 4 at the bottom there. Now I have to go across and determine how many quarter notes are there. So here's a quarter note, that's 1. This dot plus this will equal another quarter note. Here's a quarter note. This eighth note, this dot is representing a 16th note because it's half the value of this. So this and this will make an eighth note. These eighth note beats now should equal one quarter note. Okay, here's another quarter note again. This dot represents an eighth note. Plus this, those 2/8 beats makes one quarter note. So I can conclude that I see a lot of values of 2 quarter notes in this bar here. So I'll go 2, 4. Okay, we'll come on over to question 4. Question 4 says rewrite the following rhythms, beaming the notes to show the basic beat. Add bar lines. So I can go across and underline some things. Rewrite the following rhythms, beaming the notes. So beaming the notes to show the basic beat. And I have to remember to add my bar lines. Okay, so I did it in advance. So I'll look across and I'll see quite a bit of eighth notes. The first thing I have to do is determine, based on these eighth notes and what I'm given, I have to make it the value of 3 quarter notes. So 2/8 notes, 1 quarter note. 2/8 notes, 1 quarter note. 2/8 notes, 1 quarter note. That'll give me 3. I drew my bar line. Here's an eighth note. These two 16th notes will equal the same value as the eighth note. So all this together will make my quarter note. This and this will make another quarter beat, and then this and this will make another quarter beat. I draw my line. Here's my eighth note. I took my dot, which is my 16th note, joined together with this 16th note. All that combined together makes one quarter note. Here's my next quarter beat. Here's my next quarter beat. Okay, so when I came down here, all I did was take each value of the eighth notes and beam them together to make it the value of the quarter. So these two eighth notes together made a quarter, so I drew my beam. These two eighth notes made my quarter, so I drew my beam to join them together. And then I did the same thing here, join them together. All these three made the 1 quarter beat. So what I did, I took my eighth note, okay, I drew my beam to join these two notes together with it. And of course I have to draw my extra beam there to show that is a 16th. These are 16th notes instead of 8th notes. 2/8 notes again, I drew my beam, 2/8 notes again, I drew my beam. So all of these end up being the value of 1 quarter note each. Quarter note, quarter note, quarter note, that's 3. Quarter note, 1 quarter note, 2, 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay, I came over here. Here's my 8th note with my dot. So I drew my dotted 8th note here, and then my 16th note on here, and then I have to draw my extra little beam. Of course, they're not going to be touching, right? Because if I touch this with this, I'm saying that this is a 16th note. So since this is a 16th note, a single one on its own, I just have to draw this small tiny beam here to show it's a single 16th note. Okay, then I have my 2/8 notes. So I join the beam, and then I have another 2/8 notes again, and I join my beams together. Okay, so based on the time signature, you must beam your notes to equal the 1 beat of what the time signature is asking. So over here, if I was asking for 4/8, these two 16th notes will be my 8th beat. So I'll beam those together. I'll leave this on its own. And then here, this is two 16th notes. I will join those together, and then here's my 8th note. Okay, so I'll start this off for you, and then you should be able to finish it off. Okay, I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, so this is how I started off my first one. So I drew my bass clef, I drew my time signature, and then these two 16th notes makes 1/8 note, so I beam those together. This is a single 8th note on its own, so I made sure I drew a single 8th note. I don't have to change it because it is asking for 8th notes. So here's my second 8th note. These two 16th notes make 1/8 note, so once again I beam those together to make my third. And then here's another single 8th note, and that will make my fourth 8th note. Okay, so you can take your time, go across, and continue on. Also remember, if it does not have these tails here, they cannot be beamed, okay? So I'm not expecting you to be beaming 2 quarter notes together. Only when it has these tails is when they can be joined together to make a beam. Okay, so you should be able to, that will conclude the lesson, and you should be able to finish the rest of the exercise.